What if your life's worth wasn't defined by what you do, but by what you dare to disobey? This video unravels the raw philosophy of Georges Bataille and exposes a truth no one wants to face. You weren't born to be useful. Stay until the end, and discover how to break free from the mandate of productivity. It all begins with a silence no one wants to hear, a silence that seeps between tasks, notifications, and ticking clocks. It's not the absence of sound, it's the absence of meaning. You wake up, you perform, you repeat, you're the result of a script written by others. Not out of cruelty, but inertia. They told you that being someone meant fitting in, producing, performing, delivering, and without realizing it, you signed the contract, the one where your time stopped being yours and became property of the system. From childhood, every step was training, not to feel, but to function. You learned to measure your worth through grades, diplomas, positions. You were taught to set goals, but never to pause, to achieve things but not to ask why. And every time you tried to slow down, the world pushed you forward again. If you're tired, you're weak. If you do nothing, you're a failure. Leisure is sin. Rest is suspicious. They've turned existence into a race with no finish line. The most brutal truth is this: you are not free. You think you choose, but your choices live inside an invisible cage, a cage with no bars, only metrics, calendars, and duties. Each day, you keep performing. You kill a little more of the wild part that lives within you, the part that doesn't understand schedules, that doesn't need to justify its existence with results, the part that simply wants to be, without having to do. Georges Bataille saw this with unsettling clarity. He didn't come to decorate life with theories. He came to dismantle it. His philosophy doesn't offer comfort. It offers rupture. It doesn't seek to make you a better person. It asks you to understand that you don't need to be anything at all. You weren't born to produce. If meaning exists, it's not found in performance, but in excess, in what you do without purpose, in what pulls you away from the system's logic. But that truth isn't convenient. If you stop producing, you become useless, and if you're useless, you disappear. But no one tells you that invisibility can be freedom, that stepping outside of usefulness can be the most human thing you'll ever do. And that hurts. Because it means everything you've done, everything you've strived for, might mean nothing. The soul doesn't wrinkle from lack of success. It wrinkles from lack of truth. And the truth is uncomfortable. Work doesn't fulfill you. It domesticates you. The system doesn't give you identity. It assigns you a function, and you accept it, because the fear of not fitting in is stronger than the desire to be. Productivity became the new religion. You don't need to pray, just perform. You don't need faith, only results. You've been trained to believe that resting is laziness, that if you're not generating something, you're failing, but no one talks about what's lost along the way. You lose wonder. You lose desire. You lose the body that wants to move without purpose, just for the pleasure of being alive. The body that wants to look without expectation, to exist without a plan. The harder you try to be useful, the further you drift from yourself. You exhaust yourself fulfilling roles that don't belong to you. You silence that quiet ache of being alive without feeling alive. That's not meaningless anxiety. That's your nature. Protesting. That's the human inside you, pounding at the walls of efficiency. Bataille didn't write to give you answers. He wrote to strip you of excuses, to show that life doesn't need justification. You don't have to earn the right to exist. You can simply sit and breathe, without monetizing it, without posting it, without turning it into content. Just be. But today, that's scandalous, because if you're not producing, progressing, accumulating, they tell you you're wasting your life. But what if that waste is exactly what you're missing? Not sterile waste, but living overflow, dancing without music, walking without destination, laughing without reason, not as rebellion, but as humanity. Because everything that escapes logic, everything that's useless, is what still connects you to who you really are. But you've buried it under routines, metrics, screens, and called it maturity. You stopped doing things just because. You stopped feeling without purpose, and that's not growth, that's amputation. Because the more productive you become, the less capable you are of being present without having to justify it. The system wants you active, but disconnected, efficient, but empty. Because someone who's full, someone connected, doesn't obey, doesn't adapt, doesn't let themselves be defined by a title, a salary, or a routine. Bataille didn't want you to reach your goals. He wanted you to burn them, to understand that your life doesn't have to be a tool, that the point isn't to get somewhere, but to inhabit the path with intensity. And that doesn't happen by doing more, but by undoing. The intensity of living isn't found in achievements. It's found in moments when pressure disappears, when you are no one to anyone, when you do nothing, and yet you're completely present. But those are the first moments you sacrifice, afraid of becoming irrelevant, because they made you believe that if you don't contribute, you don't matter. That's the perfect trap, keeping you busy so you never ask if any of this makes sense. And the cruelest part, you feed the machine yourself. You fill your days with noisy to avoid hearing the silence. You push yourself without mercy because you don't know who you are. Beyond performance, even rest has become a task. You don't sleep to heal. You sleep to perform better. You don't eat for pleasure. You eat for function. You don't move for joy. You move for aesthetics. Everything must have a goal. Everything must be useful, but life is not a tool, and you are not a means to an end. Bataille shouted it clearly. Real existence begins when you stop searching for usefulness in everything you do. When you give yourself permission to exist without function. That's the inner experience he spoke of. A state of overflowing humanity that no longer obeys the molds of success, duty, or sanity. You've been tamed by a logic that isn't yours, a logic that confuses order with meaning, efficiency with truth, usefulness with value. But you are not an equation. You are not a finished product. You are chaos, impulse, desire, contradiction. You are body before agenda, silence before speech, presence before plan, and you've sacrificed all of that for an ideal you never questioned. Reclaiming your freedom doesn't require a manifesto, just a gesture, a small act that breaks the cycle, not to become someone special, but to finally become yourself. Walk for no reason. Stay in silence. Say no. Turn off the clock. Stop without guilt. In those small acts, real disobedience begins. Because nothing threatens the system more than someone who no longer needs to be useful to feel alive. And when you reach that moment, when you finally stop functioning and simply exist, that's when another life begins. A life where you no longer obey. A life where, for the first time, you are truly awake. If this stirred something in you, don't ignore it. Subscribe, hit like and share what resonated with you, turn on the bell, and explore more of our content. See you in the next video, where we keep breaking the mold to remember what it truly means to be alive.